Hi, I'm Bob Moore with Windstream Technologies, and today we're going to talk about demystifying artificial intelligence for the real world. Windstream is a premier cloud-native transformation partner for AWS, one of the top partners for AI and application modernization within the AWS ecosystem, and we're very proud to be a veteran of business. So, AI is everywhere. AI is consistently in today's news cycle. It seems like everything we talk about, even in today's COVID world, when we talk about all the different sort of analytics and things that are going on, with respect to bringing data together and different sorts of things to help find a vaccine and help find therapeutics and things like that. AI is in the middle of all of that research. It used to be a PhD and a supercomputer were required to do this, right? I'm a child of the 80s. I graduated in 1990, and back then we were talking about artificial intelligence and things like that, and you needed a supercomputer and lots of graduate assistants and things, and today we're going to talk about why you don't really need to do that anymore. Today, in a very real sense, the cloud is a collection of loosely coupled services woven together with software. We like to say that the cloud is just an API way. Here at Windstream, as we do cloud transformation, as we do application modernization, as we weave AI into our projects, it's really simple and becoming much easier with every new cycle that comes through because of just weaving things together with APIs. Today, we can now use the cloud to focus on really interesting problems. So what I mean by that is that AI finds its way into very small pieces of what we do in very large applications, big and small. AI is becoming more and more of a piece of every one of those applications and every one of those solutions that we provide to our customers as they go on their journey through cloud transformation. We've all heard this, but it's true. The reality is that data is the new gold. It used to be back, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was all about data analytics. We talked about things like Hyperion and Tableau and all these different sorts of tools. I had a lot of Oracle in my background, and we used to spend a lot of time worrying about, how we're going to organize this data and really make sense of it so that we can actually bring information out of it so that we could help our business leaders continue to drive whatever respective business we were helping them with. But today, artificial intelligence and machine learning are the best asset to be able to help mine that data into information for companies. So what is AI? So artificial intelligence is this very big, broad, collection of how we sort of view the world, how we use data, how we use all these outside of influences that kind of can come in and have a computer model tell us what to do. So AI in a very broad sense is, I'm a child of the 80s, like I said, and to me, Terminator, right? So we've seen multiple Terminator versions out there, and that's really, when I think about AI, I think about that, where all of the machine learning and all of the artificial intelligence come together for an intelligence that can essentially take over the world. Machine learning is really sort of a subset of that. When you take the ability of using data, you run it through sort of a machine learning algorithm, and that data can be consumed and intelligent decisions can be made from that data. So when you go into Netflix or you go into Disney Plus or you go into YouTube, all of that data is constantly going into algorithms so that it serves you up. If you only have so many little squares with which to get your video, you need to be able to have somebody else that's a lot more intelligent with your data being able to serve up things that you're most interested in. Google search is the same sort of thing. Deep learning is really what's needed, where you need really deep inspection into what's going on with the data. You really need very complex algorithms to make sure things are happening in real time, and it has to be spot on. So when we think about driverless cars as an example, the amount of processing power, the amount of intelligence, the amount of technology that goes in to making sure that all of those inputs, literally millions of inputs in real time falling in to make sure that your car doesn't hit somebody, that's what deep learning is, and that's definitely the cutting edge of what's out there today. But what we're going to talk about is what's used in business most today. What do we see? As Windstream, we work with a lot of customers, building applications, helping them on cloud journeys, doing data lakes. What do we see the most of today? And it's really machine learning. So one of the things we're going to talk about today is really artificial intelligence in our mind is really machine learning, because that's what's the most easily attainable. Everyone can touch it, everyone can play with it, and we're going to talk about some of those examples. So how easy is it stuff to do? So we have a lot of talented people here, and we do projects for people all the time. And so when you think about how easy is it to sort of weave these things together, one of the reasons why we love being an AWS partner is that there's so many just services out there, like we said before, where you can weave together applications by tying all these services together with software. So it's really great where, I started as a software engineer, 3 decades ago, and you had to develop every little thing that you wanted to do. So if you wanted to, throw an algorithm in there to talk about, doing some data analysis, you'd have to build that algorithm from scratch. You'd have to build everything around it. All those ancillary services today, you just log on to AWS and you pick what services, what you're going to want to use, and then you sort of just, tie those things together with not a lot of lines of code. So if we talk about something like this, where I'm presenting to you in real time, so we have the presenter, which is me, and we have the audio video conference capturing. So here's an example where we could weave various pieces where, so me, the presenter, I'm Bob, you are the video capture, and so we can then take what I'm talking about, transcribing the speech to text, so that we can sort of take that in, and that can then go into other media with which we can use as part of the broadcast. We can bring in imagine if you had a camera focused on you and seeing what you're doing. Well, then we can have Kinesis then go ahead and take that in that real-time video analysis and start bringing metadata and interesting tags out about what you're doing. We can then continue moving it down the pipeline a little bit. We can say, okay, now maybe that we want to broadcast this to China and Europe and Russia. Well, we would be able to then use the translate service to then translate what I'm talking about. We'd be able to use the comprehend service to do natural language processing, so that we can sort of pull interesting metadata out of what I'm actually trying to say, so a bigger idea of what I'm trying to say. But then we'd also be able to be pulling, with recognition, image analysis and various things that are going on, as you are sitting watching this video. And so it all comes together where the broadcast takes various pieces of what we're pulling together and what I'm talking about, and we can broadcast that around the globe in various different, geo-specific areas. And then, we can then also archive and pull out the data, the metadata, and the interesting pieces of the entire broadcast that we can later use at a later date. And so what we're trying to do is very, very simplistic. But when you think about the collection of services you're able to weave together to do a very interesting sort of real-time analysis of a presenter, and also bringing in what's going on with the conference, it's an amazing thing to do relatively easily and very, very, very straightforward. So one of the things we like to talk about is we like to play with things at EvoDream. And so we had a very interesting example with the Deep Lens product from AWS, where we just had some engineers play with it, and so let me tell you what we did. So, what do we do for fun? We like to integrate products, right? We like to integrate things and build things, and especially whenever we do different sort of tech talks and different sorts of things, we like to say, hey, wouldn't it be really cool if we can do this with that or whatever? And so people just sort of play with it, which is, to me, sort of, being a senior member of the staff, that's one of the stuff that I love to see. So we all know how Alexa works, right? You can walk into a conference room. So where we got this idea was, we're also a partner with a company called RingCentral. And RingCentral is the leader in cloud communications and video conferencing and things like that. Well, we've all, especially today in the pandemic world, we live in Zoom and we live in Google Meets and things like that, where you go in, you click your link and it comes up and you start your video conference and you start acting weird about like making sure your hair's good or whatever. But that's a very manual. Well, what RingCentral did is they integrated that with Alexa. So you can walk into a conference room, or you can just sit at home and say, hey, Alexa, start my conference. And then of course that all happens behind the scenes with, in the AWS cloud with respect to machine learning and different sorts of things in the back end. But that's all Alexa integrations that RingCentral did out of the box. Well, for one of these talks a year or so ago, one of our engineers said, wouldn't it be cool if we could integrate Deep Lens so that when you walked into the conference room, it would recognize, hey, that's Bob, and I see that Bob has a conference starting about this time. Maybe I can go ahead and just start that conference. So it was very easy with our engineers in our software to say, look, let's wire that up. So instead of me walking in and say, Alexa, start my conference, when I walk into the room, then Alexa comes back and says, hello, Bob, would you like me to start your conference? So this actually, it took about 6 hours of investigation and coding and whatever, and we were able to sort of wire up a really cool demo. This is sort of an example of what they did, and again, it was just sort of this idea of like, let's see if we can do that. So, when you think about all the different sorts of things, when you can take a Deep Lens off the shelf, play with some code, come up with some real world ideas. It's really something really creative to do. It's really fun. Even if you just want to start, understanding how you tie these things together, it was sort of really the fun thing to do. Look, I mean, this is really an example of what we talk about when we say AWS machine learning services are just an API away. It's easy. Anyone can do it. So let's talk about some of the ways some of our customers are using AI. PGA. PGA is another one of our customers, and they came up with this idea with one of their seniors last year. They said, look, we'd like to see if we can come up with an interesting way to pull out, when people go through the merge tents or people go through the hospitality tents and things like that, they wanted to be able to capture things like logos and buying opportunities and what was really going on inside of those venues without sort of bugging people or being intrusive. So they worked out a sort of a proof of concept where we took deep lenses in the merge tents and they were able to sort of pull out what corporate logos were, what people were buying, what they weren't buying, what were the traffic patterns, and they were able to pull out interesting information that they were used to improve that buying experience in the future. Again, very straightforward thing to do. It was actually just a POC. But when you sort of talk through the business data and the business transformation aspects of doing things like that very unobtrusively with very small cameras around, it's an amazing thing to be able to do pretty quickly and cost effectively. Another one of our customers, Cognizite. This is a very exciting application for us, a complete application modernization project. It's in a data center today, and when we're done with it, it's going to be serverless. The economics of this is fantastic. But part of that is when you bring in images of data and images of the files that historically you would have people just sit and scan and log and pull relevant information out of there. Those are now all just feeding through AI machine learning algorithms to pull out the relevant information off those forms and off those scans. So A, it's very cost effective to build that application. B, it becomes very cost effective to sort of manage and scale that organization. And C, we've been able to build the application much faster because we leverage these off-the-shelf services that we're able to weave together and provide a lot of value to Cognizite. 5x5 is another exciting customer. 5x5 actually produces drones that fly up through cell towers, as an example, and they pull off all the information that is on a cell tower. So all the various gizmos and wireless antennas and things like that. But instead of sending up people in trucks and climbing up these things a couple of times a year, their customers actually pay 5x5 to fly a drone up while we help them build the software. And AI is in the middle of that to do the image recognition of the various things that are in there to pull out what's a Verizon antenna from an AT&T thing or whatever, and they're able to pull that all in real time. That video gets downloaded, that runs through other algorithms that we built, and then that go ahead and provides the meaningful data for 5x5 customers. Pretty exciting. Virtual Moving Technologies is another interesting company where if you've ever had to go through and move your house, people generally come through with a little clipboard and sort of take dimensions and do whatever, and they come up with an estimate. What VMT did is they came up with an idea to just walk in, take an iPhone video of what's going on in your house. Using image recognition, you're able to sort of pull out those different sorts of things. Hey, that looks like a couch, that looks like a table, that looks like an armoire, and then you were able to put up an estimate from that. So, when I gave this talk originally at RIT in the spring, it was actually the last event I attended before the pandemic. So it was really about talking to a bunch of software engineering types, and we said, look, what do you want to do when you grow up? So I wanted to talk about being at the right place at the right time, right? Being in, 30 years ago when I graduated from RIT, I thought I was in the right place at the right time because we were doing things like C and C++ and object-oriented programming. Of course, that was before Java and all this other cool stuff came out. And we thought we were doing the best stuff available. But now when you look at like I said before, when any problem that you had to solve with any sort of scale took a lot of people and a lot of code, because you really had to reinvent almost everything you were doing. And reuse at that time was actually just becoming part of what we were thinking about. Well, now it's very, very easy and very, very cost effective for people just to go into a cloud, pick your cloud of choice. We prefer AWS, and you're able to leverage and just talk to these services and sort of weave them together, do interesting things like we've already talked about. So it's an exciting time to be growing up and hitting the ground running as a software engineer. The careers in AI now are hot. vast majority of what we talk about and what we build for customers has some sort of AI or machine learning piece in there. To me, actually, when we've gone back and looked at different sorts of things, the majority of the application modernization programs that we're working on for people have some component and different pieces and parts of those services within AWS that we're able to just use very easily and to bring out real data and real transformation for our customers. Because it's easy. Again, this whole notion of just being an AI API away is really, really powerful if you're already a software engineer, because you can do amazing things by just seeing what's out there and pulling them together within to make really great applications. And again, like I just said, about 75% of all our new software engineering projects, whether it's application modernization or helping build people build custom applications from the ground up, AI is in 75% of those, and it's an amazing thing. I would have never, me personally, that's been accelerating. I would have never thought we would have been there even 3 or 4 years ago. But today, almost every project that we're working on has some component of it, which is really cool because I'm not that smart, and I don't think you have to be, you don't have to be the best software engineer in the world to be using and doing amazing things because of the services within AWS. So, when we're talking about being prepared for sort of software engineering in the 2020s and thinking about how we leverage AI and ML and things like that, I thought it'd be interesting. So as I reflected when I did this, like I said when I did this presentation back in March at RIT, it's been about 30 years since I graduated, and so I said, okay, I graduated in 1991. What was it like? Doing, what was it like sort of learning data analytics and things like that back in 91 versus today? So back in 1991, you had academia-led AI research. So yeah, AI was going on, you had all these things going on. It was the 80s, right? So lots of things going on, and things were just started coming, right? It just seems, as much as we think that things are accelerating today, we thought the same thing back then. But you really needed a bunch of PhDs, millions and millions of dollars of corporate funded research in order to figure out what AI was really going to do in the future. Today we have cloud AI and ML services. So what we just talked about, right? You can just go out there and connect to the various APIs that are out there and do it relatively cheaply and relatively quickly. And one of the mantras here at Windstream is we like to fail fast. And what's amazing about AWS services is what specifically in AI and machine learning is that you're able to try something, you're able to fail quickly. So now we can play with it and fail for a couple $100 as opposed to what you had to do 30 years ago, which was get supercomputer time and pay a bunch of really smart people to try and figure it out for you. So back then, technology was driving the data. So data was always been there, data's always been around. But back then, it was really sort of the technology driving what you could and couldn't do. So, we talk about Oracle databases and Microsoft SQL and things like that. Those technologies really were just starting in the 90s, right? Today, it's sort of the fundamental thing of large enterprises. But back then, you really had to build your own technology to make use of the data. Today, data is driving technology, right? Like we talked about. With the value of data today and the need and the accelerating need for businesses to be able to bring out the information from the data, it's really driving the newer technologies. So when you talk about how easy it is to use AI and ML, that's really an offshoot of really what we mean about data-driving technology, because that technology is now keeping up to try and make it faster and quicker to analyze that data. 30 years ago, we actually had humans programming computers. Who'd have thought? Lots of hands on keyboards, lots of millions of lines of code, and today we have computers managing humans. So again, when you think about whether it's a resource scheduling algorithm, whether it's a CRM platform, whatever, you now have all that data that's being consumed from basic to very sophisticated AI and ML algorithms actually driving decisions that are driving humans. When you take a look at large call centers, when you take a look at e-commerce platforms, when you take a look at all of that, they all have some notion of a computer making decisions that are telling humans what to do in that workflow. I have an MBA, and I was very proud to hone my skills back in not so long ago, 15, 20 years ago, and I thought I was an Excel whiz, and because we got to do really cool things and all kinds of things with predictive algorithms and stats and things like that. Well, we recently worked on some projects with a very large university here locally, and we were actually part of a professor's goal of being able to teach their MBA's data sciences using AI and big data tools within AWS. So, I sort of paused on that a little bit and I'm like, holy heck, I started feeling really old because I thought I was really great at Excel. Back then I was a computer programmer, that was like the thing, right? But again, we worked very, very hard, very long hours, pounding out a lot of code. Today, it's about data scientists. When you take a look at, all the fast-growing careers, like we saw on a previous slide, 3 or 4 of the top 10 careers, not only today, but for the next 10 years, is all having to do with data sciences and AI ML. It's really sort of amazing, the acceleration. 30 years ago, you needed a very expensive data center with lots and lots of things in there, servers and databases and networking gear and racks and cooling and HVAC and all that sort of stuff. Now today, you can accomplish logarithmically more capabilities with just a couple of lines of code. So with that, I want to say thank you for spending your time with me. Just wanted to give you a little flavor. I know it was pretty quick and it was sort of just across the, just scratching the surface of a lot of things, but companies like us at EagleDream, we do a lot of application modernization for people. AI is at the center of almost everything we do. It's really easy to play with it and get in there and learn it, and go out and have some fun. Thanks.